In the years following our wedding, Patricia and I had built what seemed like an idyllic life for ourselves in the heartland of America. Our charming house, nestled in the picturesque landscapes of Wisconsin, represented a haven of tranquility and love. It was our sanctuary, miles away from the clamor of city life, densely populated by endless cornfields and vast blue skies. Our days revolved around our cozy home, shared meals, and the thriving career I had worked hard to establish. Life was peaceful, but it didn't stay that way for long. You see, there was another key character in our small world, Patricia's father, Frank. Frank, a burly man with piercing blue eyes, was a traditional man proud of his roots. He had always been an active participant in our lives, but his involvement began to morph into something more sinister. I remember one evening, sitting in the sanctuary of our shared study, clicking away at my laptop, when Patricia walked in. Her expression was one I hadn't seen before, a confusing mix of anxiety and concern. She looked at me, her hazel eyes filled with worry. "Honey, we need to talk about my dad." I took off my glasses, a silent invitation for her to delve into whatever was on her mind. "I think he's up to something. I found these in his study," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, as she handed me a stack of papers. What I saw in those documents was nothing short of a betrayal. Frank had been digging into my budding business venture, collecting sensitive financial reports and even carrying out his own private investigations. I felt a wave of anger coupled with a sense of sorrow as I leafed through each page. How could the man I'd come to regard as my second father do something like this? My mind started racing, trying to comprehend why Frank would want to sabotage my career. He had always insisted that he wanted nothing but the best for Patricia and me. Yet, there he was, with detailed documents designed to undermine the financial stability of our family. The peace within our household was teetering on the verge of shattering. I looked at Patricia, perplexed. "Why would he do this?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. She took my hand in hers, a silent acknowledgement of the chaos we were about to plunge into. "I don't know, but I think he's got something against you." The words hung heavy in the air. The man who had given his blessing at our wedding, the man who had promised to be there for us, was the same man trying to pull the rug out from under our feet. The decision was hard, and the thought of revealing Frank's treachery was heartbreaking. To expose a man I had come to respect and love felt akin to stabbing myself. Yet, it was necessary for the survival of a life we had painstakingly built. Over the following days and nights, I began to piece together evidence of Frank's meddling. I pored over every piece of documentation he had clandestinely gathered, evidence of a planned attack against my career. The betrayal cut deep, but I knew that I couldn't let his actions rule our lives. We were in a war we never asked for, a war we didn't want. But if Frank had declared war on us, then I was ready to fight back. And it was time to reveal a secret of his own, one that I hoped would shake him to his core and halt his destructive path. Ever since that day, a thick fog of tension and unease hung over our lives. It grew, slowly, gradually, darkening with every passing day. It felt like we were on a sinking ship, desperately trying to stop the water from pouring in. My father-in-law, Richard, was the storm cloud over our heads. His actions, once merely annoying, had become destructive and harmful. It started subtly, with hushed whispers and furrowed brows exchanged whenever my name came up during the coffee breaks in the office. Employees who would once greet me with a warm smile now hurried past me, eyes glued to their shoes. I noticed strange glances and heard my name whispered behind closed doors. Then, my colleagues started avoiding professional discussions with me, as if afraid of sharing any confidential information. Eventually, I realized my father-in-law was spreading rumors about me at my workplace. He was sullying my professional image, painting me as an untrustworthy individual, and he didn't stop there. My business strategies, painstakingly developed over countless nights of hard work, started to leak out to my competitors. It was a double blow. Not only was my reputation undermined, but my hard work was being utilized by competitors to outshine me in the market. I was trapped in a nightmarish reality. Each day was a battle, one punctuated by the cold, haunting laughter of my father-in-law echoing in my mind. At home, my wife, Laura, was blissfully ignorant of Richard's scheming. She was trapped in the crossfire, torn between her love for her father and the growing strain on our marriage. I wanted to protect her, to shield her from the harsh reality that was our life, but as Richard's actions became more severe, I found it increasingly challenging to keep up the facade. One night, after we'd put our daughter to bed, I confronted Laura about the situation. I don't know who was shaking more, me or her, as I unraveled the terrible truth. "Laura, your father, he's been sabotaging me," I confessed, barely able to meet her teary gaze. Her face went deathly pale. "What do you mean, Joe? What are you talking about?" I detailed everything, from the rumors to the leaked strategies. I held nothing back. She listened, silent, her eyes widening in disbelief and hurt with every word spoken. "Oh, Joe," Laura whispered, tears streaming down her face. I don't know what to say. My dad—" She collapsed into my arms, her small frame shaking with sobs. I held her, my heart breaking. We were both victims of one man's vendetta. "I'll make things right, Laura. I promise," I whispered into her hair. Day after day, I would leave for work with a heavy heart, knowing each step I took brought me closer to the battlefield. My father-in-law's actions were not just hurting me. They were hurting my wife, his own daughter. He was destroying her faith, her belief in the sanctity of family. My resolve hardened, fueled by a newfound determination. I decided to fight back, to expose Richard for the saboteur he was. I didn't know how this would affect our family dynamics, but I knew I couldn't stand back and let him ruin my life. I was acutely aware of the consequences. Revealing Richard's deceit could shake our family to the core, but I knew that I had no choice. It was the only way to stop him. He had to face the consequences of his actions, just like he'd forced me to face mine. I just hoped that when the dust settled, my family, my marriage, could still withstand the storm. After all, a secret once out in the open can change everything. The following Wednesday, I sat in my car parked a few blocks away from a rundown apartment building. It was dark, save for a lone streetlight that flickered intermittently, and the neighborhood was eerily quiet, save for the occasional barking of distant dogs. Earlier in the day, I had gotten an anonymous tip from someone claiming to know about my father-in-law, Daniel's past. The message was vague, but it mentioned this address. It was my only lead at the moment. I felt a fresh wave of anxiety wash over me. I had no idea what I was about to unearth. Was it going to be something terrible? Something that could rip our family apart? After a few minutes of gathering my courage, I stepped out of my car and approached the building. It was a decrepit building that had seen better days. I walked up the creaky stairs and made my way to apartment 3B, as per the instructions in the message. I rapped on the door lightly, feeling a strange cold fear gripping my stomach. An elderly woman opened the door, her face lined with years of hardship. Her eyes scanned me up and down before she asked in a shaky voice, "Who are you?" I hesitated for a second. An old friend of Daniel's. I was hoping we could talk. She seemed to consider this for a moment, and then with a nod, she let me in. The apartment was a small, cluttered space filled with old pictures, and it smelled faintly of mothballs. Over a cup of tea, I cautiously steered the conversation towards Daniel. The woman, who introduced herself as Ruby, didn't seem surprised. "I wondered when someone would come asking about him," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's got a lot of past that he's buried." Then she began to talk about a crime that Daniel had committed years ago before he became the suave, successful businessman and family man. It was a petty theft case that had gone horribly wrong, culminating in a tragic accident. Daniel had fled the scene, leaving behind a young man to face the consequences alone, a man who had spent years in jail while Daniel built his empire. I sat there, stunned, as Ruby recounted the story. My heart pounded in my chest, and my palms were slick with sweat. I felt a strange mix of emotions, shock, anger, and a deep sense of betrayal. The man I had respected and admired for years was not who he seemed to be. "Are you sure about all this?" I asked, my voice shaky as I tried to process the information. "I was there when it happened," Ruby replied, her gaze steady on me. "I saw Daniel leave, and I saw that young man take the fall. I left Ruby's apartment in a daze, the weight of the revelation pressing down heavily on me. The drive back home was a blur. I tried to reconcile the image I held of Daniel with the man Ruby had described, and found it impossible. That night, I sat in my study, the evidence of Daniel's crime laid out in front of me. Ruby had given me old newspaper clippings and photographs. There was no denying it. Daniel was a criminal, and he had hidden it from all of us. I felt a cold knot of dread in the pit of my stomach as I thought about what this would do to our family. But it was time for the truth to come out. Daniel had to be held accountable for his actions. Despite the darkness of the secret I had unearthed, there was also a glimmer of relief. In a twisted way, Daniel's past explained his present. It explained his attempt to sabotage my career. He was a man who would do anything to protect his secrets, to maintain his image of respectability. As I sat there, I knew what I had to do. It was time to confront Daniel and reveal his darkest secret to everyone. It was a daunting task, but it was necessary. The truth had to be told. As the mercury plummeted that December evening, so too did the temperature of the atmosphere in the room. The entire family had gathered in the living room. A space usually teeming with laughter and camaraderie was now pregnant with an eerie silence. My father-in-law, Richard, was seated in his favorite chair, a smug smile etched on his face. He'd managed to sabotage my career rather ruthlessly, despite being the man who was supposed to be my second father. His blue eyes, usually twinkling with mirth, wore an unnerving hardness that made my stomach churn. The veneer of the affable, caring family man had worn off, revealing the true manipulator beneath it. I glanced at my wife, Lisa. Her hazel eyes glossed with a layer of worry. Her hand was clutched tightly around mine, a silent beacon of support. I gave it a reassuring squeeze before standing up from the cozy confines of our couch, my heart pounding an erratic rhythm in my chest. I cleared my throat. Every eye in the room turned toward me. Determination steeled my resolve. "I have something to say," I started, my voice steadier than I expected. "Something about Richard." Richard's lips curled into a grin, an audacious display of confidence. He probably thought I was going to grovel, to beg him to reinstate my job back. Little did he know. Many of you know how I lost my job recently. Murphy, Lisa's burly, red-headed older brother, grunted in the corner. He had always been wary of Richard, but never spoke much about it. "Yes, I was fired because of false accusations of embezzlement. Accusations planted by our dear Richard," I said, my voice echoing through the room. A gasp erupted from the room, a cacophony of disbelief. Richard's grin faltered, but just for a moment. He had always been a smooth operator, and he laughed, dismissing it as a ridiculous claim. "Undeterred," I continued, however, "what you all don't know is this. Richard didn't just do this out of malice. It's in his nature." I looked directly at Richard, his smile now vanished. "Ask him about the scandal in his company back in 1986. Ask him about why he had to leave Chicago abruptly." The room fell silent as every family member turned to look at Richard, eager for him to dismiss this claim too. Only this time, he didn't. His face paled, his eyes widened in shock. His voice, when he found it, was but a whisper. How do you know that? Lisa looked between me and her father, her eyebrows knitted in confusion and apprehension. Her father had always painted a rosy picture of their time in Chicago. In reality, he had been forced to relocate because of a scandal he was responsible for, a scandal I had recently discovered. I shrugged, spreading my palms wide. Doesn't matter. What matters is you've been hiding this secret, letting us believe you're someone you're not. You're not a family man, Richard. You're a man who destroys families, including your own. Richard slumped into his chair, looking a fraction of the imposing figure he was. Murmurs of shock reverberated through the room, as family members sat stunned. The perfect picture of our family patriarch had been shattered, the pieces revealing a man far from perfect. My wife was silent throughout the ordeal, her face a mixture of shock and pain. I turned to look at her, my heart aching at the sight. I had revealed a secret that shattered her world, but it was necessary. As the family slowly came to terms with the revelation, an uneasy silence settled in the room again. The man who was once at the top was now at the bottom, his dark past finally caught up with him. And though it pained me, I knew I had done the right thing. I brought down the man who tried to bring me down. I tore down the facade of a loving father-in-law and revealed the snake underneath. And as the reality sank, the family was shaken, but at least they were no longer deceived. The days that followed the revelation were unlike anything our family had ever experienced before. There were mistakes made, egos bruised, and plenty of apologies sent in a frantic attempt to mend the gaping hole that had been torn through our family's peace. My father-in-law, Robert, sat a little quieter at the dining table each day, his normally boastful attitude replaced with an awkward silence. Even the crevices in his aged face seemed deeper, more pronounced, each line a testament of regret and guilt. I watched from the corner of my eye as he fumbled with his silverware, avoiding eye contact with anyone who dared address him. One evening, when the sting of betrayal was still fresh, he requested a private conversation with me. I hesitated at first, wary of what might come. But the profound remorse in his eyes was undeniable. In that moment, I decided to offer him the benefit of the doubt. "John," he began, his voice unsteady, "I've been thinking a lot about what I've done. I know I can't, for a moment, undo the damage, but I want you to know how truly sorry I am." His eyes, usually so full of self-assured confidence, now glistened with the sheen of unshed tears. I listened, swallowed my own anger, resentment. It took every ounce of my strength not to let my hurtful words fly. After all, hadn't he tried to ruin me? To discredit my name? My entire career? The silence between us stretched on, growing heavier with each passing second. Finally, I found my voice. "Robert," I said, trying to suppress the bitterness in my tone. "I want to believe you. But it wasn't just about me, was it? The reputation of this entire family was at stake. We trusted you and you." My voice trailed off. He nodded solemnly, the guilt visible in his eyes. "I know, John, and I can't express how sorry I am. I guess I let my insecurities and jealousy get the best of me. It was wrong of me to project them onto you. I hope that someday you all can find it in your hearts to forgive me." In the weeks that followed, our family dynamic shifted dramatically. Robert had confessed to his wife, children, and the rest of the family. He revealed not only his attempt to ruin my career, but also the secret he'd been keeping for years. His own fall from grace, his monumental failure that had cost him his own career and reputation. The family, shocked and dismayed, rallied around one another. Together, we worked through feelings of betrayal and hurt. Conversations once filled with mindless chatter now held raw honesty and vulnerability. We opened up, shared our fears, our failures, no longer afraid of judgment or reprisal. Somehow, despite the pain caused by Robert's actions, a stronger bond was being forged among us. His wife, my mother-in-law, Margaret, who'd always been somewhat distant, now reached out more. My own relationship with my wife, Anne, deepened as we navigated the storm together. Throughout it all, Robert made earnest efforts to make amends, asking for forgiveness, not just with words, but through his actions. He began volunteering, using his skills to help others, and in turn, make up for his past. Eventually, I came to understand him better. Behind his bravado and arrogance lay a man grappling with his own insecurities and failures. He was a man brought low by his past, desperately trying to hold on to some semblance of the prestige he once owned by sabotaging someone else's success. That year, our family went through a roller coaster of emotions. We loved, we fought, we forgave. In the end, the incident, catastrophic as it was, brought us closer together. We emerged stronger, our bonds unbreakable. It taught us that families aren't perfect, and neither are the individuals that comprise them. It was a hard lesson, fraught with bitterness and heartache. But it was a lesson we needed. In the end, Robert's betrayal and the subsequent revelation of his secret was the catalyst for a new understanding amongst us, an understanding that forever changed the dynamic of our family.